Welcome to the sage verse, with real works and true words. Patterns of recognition leave your brain converged. Time is irrelevant when the thoughts of impediment corrupt your soul with mind-numbing nemesis. The sage's way is where the truth hits the page. Turn your soul into a library in the name of knowledge and discovery. We seek out reality to be gone of human apathy. Welcome to the sage verse, where we explore the pressing questions of our age. My name's Jason, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine and fellow founder of the channel, Hermes. What are we doing today, brother?
So we're introducing the first episode of our podcast, The Sage's Way. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
So, essentially, The Sage's Way is the embodiment of self-discovery. It gives us the opportunity to discuss a variety of different topics. And we also welcome the opinions and the ideas of the viewers too. Please feel free to share your comments in the comments section below. On today's episode, we will be discussing Plato's Allegory of the Cave. I know you love this story. I know you've written a few things about it. Do you have any first ideas springing to mind?
I remember discovering, I've always been into ancient Greek philosophy. That was the first kind of philosophy I was into. I'm of Greek descent, so makes sense. So Plato's Allegory of the Cave I discovered in my late teens, and I just remember it was just a massive, enlightening thing for me. And around my mid-20s, I wrote a piece, kind of in my own words, in regards to the theory, kind of like a short story, which I'm going to read to kind of introduce the idea to anyone that's not aware of the Allegory of the Cave.
Yeah, go on, hit us off. I want to hear it.
All right, so I'll get straight into it. So the piece is from my WordPress. I can link it in the description for anyone that's interested in reading it for themselves. So it's hermeswrites.wordpress.com. And yeah, let's get going. The Allegory of the Cave. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is perhaps one of my favorite theories of all time. It paints a beautiful picture of the meaning of enlightenment and the important responsibility of those who are in an awakened state of being. I will paint this picture once more with my own words. Envision 5 people living in a cave underground. Here is where they were born, and here is where they have always been. In this cave, they have had their necks and limbs chained so they are unable to move but only look at what is before them. Right at the back of the cave, behind them, there is a fire and puppeteers. Oblivious to the 5 men, these puppeteers have always been with them since the beginning. These puppeteers use the fire and their puppets to cast shadows onto the wall that lays before the 5 men. These shadows are all the 5 men have ever known. They worship the shadows, create their own truths about the shadows, argue over the shadows, and even compete with one another to see who can identify the shadows fastest. Envision once more that one man is suddenly freed from his chains and compelled to explore the cave, and for the first time properly working his weak limbs. This man continues on his exploration, excited to find the truth behind the origin of the shadows, with hopes his ideas of the shadows will be proven as truth. If he saw the fire in the puppeteers, would this man not be perplexed? Would his whole world not be torn from underneath him, and his life left with no meaning? Would his first instinct not to be to cling to the truth he had known in the shadows and turn away from the light? He did. He returned to his shackles and returned to his companions, who subsequently mocked what his eyes had seen and labeled them to be mere illusions. At this moment he had a choice: return to his comfortable lie or continue on to the exploration of this painful truth. And then he saw it. Beyond the great fire he saw an exit to the cave. Against the advice of his companions and the resistance of his own mind, he hurried towards this exit, leaping through the fire and towards freedom. After his eyes adjusted to his new environment, he felt the beams of the sun, saw the beauty of nature, heard the harmony of the chirping birds, smelt the fragrance from the flowers, and it was at this moment he experienced his first ever taste of true freedom. He now knew he had been living as a prisoner. How did he not see this before? How did he not realize that his limbs were meant for movement, his senses for taking in the beauty of the world, his mind for more than the simple contemplations of the shadows on the wall? He realized that until he had been given the contrast of the light of the world, he could not see the darkness he had truly been living in. Taking a moment away from the bliss of his new experience, he remembered his companion. What of them? He recalled their taunts and how they looked upon him as if he were mad. He considered leaving them behind, but remembered that he was once like them. He was once in the same darkness they found themselves in, and had it not been for him being freed from his chains, he would still be among them. So he descended back into their world, passing through the fire and standing before them. The four men welcomed him back home with hopes he had forgotten the madness he spewed in the past and was ready to join them and glance at the great shadows that projected before them as they prepared to see who could be the first to identify the afternoon shadow. He took a moment to think to himself the insignificance of such honours and glories that before he held in such high esteem. Before taking any time to respond, he loosened and released all of their chains and expressed to them the life that existed beyond the cave and the truth that lay beyond the shadows. Once again they made a fool of this man. They laughed and now saw him as an unrivaled maniac. All but one. One took a moment to consider the possibility that this man may be telling the truth. So he stood up for the first time, allowing his chains to descend onto the floor. At the astonishment of the remaining shadow watchers, though he stood in disbelief, this man made the notion that he had always known the shadows, and that the shadows he could always return. But did this man not deserve at least a chance to prove what he says he had seen? Two of the men, so firm and sure in their belief, remained seated. They would hear no more of this and continue to look upon their shadows. Another man, against every fibre of his being, rose to his feet and followed the lead of this enlightened man to their first ever taste of true freedom. The meaning of this theory to me is that it is the duty of all those who have experienced any form of truth to continue onto the path of truth and not to hoard your truths, but to share these truths. Though you may be mocked, though you may be outcasted by those who were once your companions, truth comes before all things, all habits and comforts, all superstitions and beliefs, and even all friendships and families. It is only truth that can set you and those you love free. Peace. Can I get your immediate reaction to that, Jason?
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many interpretations there. I suppose the first thought that came to mind was the concept of truth as this kind of forbidden fruit, almost, right? It's the idea of being awakened to something that is beyond the comprehension of others. Well, not necessarily beyond the comprehension, but beyond their experience. So it's kind of like you've experienced something that shows a completely different reality to someone that has experienced, like in the allegory of the cave, shadows which are a reflection, almost the facade of true nature. But it could also be said that there is no objective truth to the degree that the shadows represent a certain perspective, right? And that the shadows could just be one possibility of many other perspectives. There might be in another situation, be it, not a cave, a forest, I don't know, that it wouldn't have been shadows, it would have been something else, the reflection of color in a certain way, I don't know. But it's saying that, for me, I think Plato is showing two sides. He's showing truth is determined by where you are, but at the same time, he's showing that there is truth beyond our own perspective. So it's kind of like he's sharing two sides. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. But that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, no, very similar. If I'm gonna kind of lay out all the different parts of the story. So you have the people kind of trapped within the cave. I guess you can see that as humanity. Yeah. You have the cave itself, which is darkness, I would say, and then you have outside of the cave, which I reflect as light, and then you have the fire and the shadow casters, which I guess, are the manipulators of their consciousness. So I would see the light and dark of consciousness itself. I think he was trying to paint. So the yeah, go on.
I'm gonna probably cut you off a few times when thoughts spring to mind.
Yeah, go for it
But
anytime.
yeah, it's just the symbolism of each aspect. Like you say,
Mm-hmm.
the light and the dark. There's obviously symbolism there. What is for you then
Mm-hmm.
that symbolism? If you can just redefine that quickly, like the light representing.
Yeah, I'd say the light representing a kind of consciousness which is within the light, or enlightenment, or someone that's aware,
Yeah.
awake. They're you know what I mean. And then the darkness is having their consciousness suppressed, and manipulated by the shadow casters. So that was the
Okay.
last part. They are the shadow casters. They are the ones keeping their consciousness kind of entertained. I would see the shadows as kind of mere entertainment, mere, manipulation. And there's always been
Media to a certain degree, or not necessarily media, but
exactly.
perhaps in our context, it would be the
Yeah.
media that, or you know,
Yeah, media definitely springs to mind. There's always been many
demonstrators of
people
information in
who
any
we've
shape
seen
or
as
form.
the people manipulating our consciousness, whether it's Freemasons, the Illuminati, the people kind of, beyond the media, the people that are directing that kind of,
Well,
yeah, there's always been theories of people.
any form of narrative that acts
Mm-hmm.
independent of critical thinking from the other side has the power of manipulation. If there is no counter conscience, right? Counter consciousness on the
Mm-hmm.
other side to understand what they are receiving, no one to question what the shadows are, right? If we
Yeah.
just accept everything that is given to us as true without questioning it as well,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem, right?
No, absolutely. And just, I like in the story how they're competing about the two shadows. They argue about the different shadows. They find their own truths about the shadows. This could be painted as many different things, and I like to see them as things that separate us. And they seem to always be perpetuating. When I say they, whatever shadow casters you will see, we can say the media. They always do seem to be casting things that separate people. You know what I mean? Different political parties, identity politics, loads of different things. So I think the meaning behind it is separation. I think that is what they want. They want people to be arguing at each other's throats because divide and conquer.
Well,
What do you think about that?
well, I like the idea of arguing, but I don't like the idea of arguing at each other's throats. I like the idea
Mm-hmm.
of attacking someone's idea and not their identity or humanity, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I mean that's a rabbit hole we could go down. The idea of divide and conquer. If you have
Mm-hmm.
an agenda, then it's much easier to guarantee the success of that agenda when there is a divided population. I think the biggest lie to a certain degree was that we could achieve diversity without the expense of unity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know about you, but if you have individuals that come from, conflicting and contrasting backgrounds, values, and comprehensions of reality, and you
Mm-hmm.
feed them a perspective and expect them to agree on that perspective when fundamentally there is no glue that holds them people together, and the glue that
Mm-hmm.
could potentially hold those people together, well, we can't have that because that becomes the most powerful argument, right? So when you have
Yeah. If I can
unity,
quickly jump in there.
yeah, hop
Because
in.
the thought came to it. So it's interesting you said that people are born into cultures, they're born into religions, they're born into same way the shadow lookers were born within that cave. They were given truths by the shadow casters. Same
Yeah,
way a lot of people are given truths by their families, by society, by
we're given
and
cultures.
even yeah, and even though the man who had left the cave and seen truth came back and was trying to be as compelling as possible, there were still those two men that remained seated, men or women,
Yeah.
that remained seated and refused to leave the cave. They were so attached to the idea of reality, they were unable to allow themselves to experience it anything separate. And I think that will always exist in society. I don't
Yeah,
think they're
I think even as an optimist, I can't refute that claim. But I have to ask you,
mhm,
Hermes,
yeah.
what did he see? What is that which we call truth? Like, what did he see?
I
What is
think
that?
you can relate. I think you can relate the allegory of the cave to many different forms of truth. If we're going to look at the kind of one truth, or how I perceive it anyway, um, I said the light and darkness of of consciousness is the kind of contrast that are shown within or without the cave. Within the cave, the shadow casters are keeping them separate with different shadows, different things to compete about. Same in our society, we're constantly given things to kind of keep us all separate, arguing with each other, keeping our minds busy with work, politics, blah blah blah. If I'm gonna say what I believe the truth is, or what our truth is to exit the cave, I think if you look to almost every mainstream religion, philosophy, the truth that always seems to be found is this idea of oneness, which is the contrast to separation. Just exact contrast to separation. Do you want to add to that?
I was going to agree with the idea of trans-historical truths, right? That there are many trans-historical truths that emerged in different cultures, which is a testament to the fact that perhaps there is something about the human experience or human nature that is fundamentally true across the board, right? By virtue of the fact that they have emerged in a multitude of different cultures at different times, at the same time, sometimes. Now, you mentioned the idea of, the whole idea of something connecting into oneness. I think, I think that does ring true for certain religions, but then there'll be some people that will go against you in the idea, I don't know, the Holy Trinity, and then the Holy Trinity, will then still encompass through God to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of
but
oneness,
even with the Trinity, there's the spirit that invokes within man as well. So even if in a Christian perspective, if you look at certain Christian mystics, they've always held this truth as well. Because if God, in a Christian aspect, is everything, we are a part of that everything as well.
Yeah, we are just an expression of the universe, right?
So I remember a quote I've read before. I think it was Lao Tzu. It's a drop can choose to see itself as separate from the ocean. There could be, you could see it as billions and billions of drops, or you can see it as one ocean. If you're going to relate that to humanity as well, or the universe, it is one thing. It is all interacting, with itself. People breathe and exhale, and then the trees take that carbon dioxide and make oxygen, and we drink water. It kind of, we're completely aligned with nature and in constant exchange day by day.
Yeah. I mean, our consciousness is just some weird phenomena, right? That doesn't exactly explain itself because it thinks it acts independently. But to what degree does it act independently if we are at the same time the universe expressing itself? Does that then, by virtue, make us the universe? And the idea that we are this one united.
I guess the idea
entity
of separation comes from the ego. And the personal sense of identity,
of course,
the picture of the person, like in school, that's when we first start developing an ego. What music do I like? What kind of clothes should I wear? What things should I say I'm interested in? It's like you're trying to portray a character, and we're taught to do that from a very young age, to build this personality that we portray as ourselves. But if you're going to ask the philosophical question of who are you, I think it goes beyond that personality.
Yeah. Can I just intervene there for a second? I was just thinking about, if we look at artificial things, right? So if you look at a car and we analyze what is the makeup of a car, we can break down and compartmentalize a car into, the steering wheel, the tires, the gearbox, the glass, in the same fashion that we could do it with the universe, right? Planets, trees, animals, and different kinds of animals, human beings and whatnot. Each of those things in a car have a specific function. In the same fashion, human beings alongside other aspects of nature seem to fulfill some kind of purpose or some kind of function. Now, are we acting independently on that function? Well, the illusion of consciousness is that we have this idea that we are acting independently, which may be the phenomena of free will, if we are to accept that.
I'll throw something in quickly, because you said the word illusion of consciousness. It just brought up, I think it's an Einstein quote. So the illusion, this is the quote, the illusion that we are separate from one another is an optical delusion of our consciousness. Yeah, I remember that's also one of my favorite quotes by
Yeah,
Albert Einstein there.
but at the same time, I think making that claim could also be argued as an illusion. Well, it seems so obvious, and this is probably the illusion, that we can perform independent functions. We can make
Of course
decisions. I mean, we're going down the road of free will and determinism here, but how are human beings separate from other aspects of nature? And if that is defined by free will, what does that say about human beings in its relationship to nature? What is the significance of that? By having a free will that allows us to operate independently, but at the same time respect the fact that we are a part of this wider collective. Does that not give us a higher level of responsibility beyond other?
I definitely believe that.
Or is that
I
arrogance,
think if you do,
human arrogance?
Yeah, I do think if you look within nature, everything is performing to an extent within some kind of cycle. Some call it the Fibonacci sequence or whatever you will. But if you look at insect kingdom, for example, if you look at the bee, the bee is just performing its duty. They build their hives, and it's actually aligned with the Fibonacci sequence. If you look at hives and the hectogons, they pollinate nature, they collect honey. Very rarely you'll see a bee go outside of its sequence.
Well, even the stock market, right? Even the stock market.
Yeah. It follows the Fibonacci sequence.
Human behavior manifests itself through the Fibonacci sequence in the stock market.
I think, that's why I think whether you want to call it the Holy Spirit or whatever, I think Taoism calls it the Tao, the way. The spirit of the universe is within us. So how we are acting still is being influenced by that oneness in the way of what you want to call spirit, I suppose. I think humans are a lot more intelligent than a lot of nature, and I think we are living in a very strange time as well. We're constantly, like I said, we watch television, we watch the internet. Our consciousness is constantly being programmed and manipulated, and I feel like if you want to look at why humans kind of are very off track or almost don't have a purpose, so the same way a bee has a purpose to pollinate nature and collect honey, humans to an extent have forgotten their purpose, if that makes sense. I think that is because we are in the cave and we are being manipulated. Yeah. So that's kind of agree.
And I mean, I think that is what, if we can return to the allegory of the cave, I think that this is also what Plato was referring to. The idea that, okay, so the reflection of true nature, right? Or the reflection of the shadows represent some form of reality, but perhaps not the true reality. So then we can ask ourselves, well, how do we align ourselves with that which is reality? Do we listen to the media?
It's like a fake reality.
Yeah.
Like in the Matrix as well. The Matrix, they're all living within the Matrix, that fake reality that you could say the shadow casters are the ones that created the Matrix, and they did that for the sake of, Morpheus goes into it, because people are like batteries. We have a certain amount of energy, and they want to turn people into batteries to just function and energize the Matrix and just drain them. You can see that as modern day society. They created this way of being, this way of needing to work, the way of society interacting with ourselves, and they want us to be batteries technically. That's what economists see us as, like, how productive are we to economic growth?
Consumerism, materialism, all that which is artificial and not true to the substance of reality, which is that which is independent of our creation, I think, in my opinion, holds more value than that which we create. Now, I'm not saying that children, even though we create them, are by definition less valuable. They are, a form of substance. So they are, natural and wonderful. But returning to then this idea that I was thinking, in that, well, the narrative that we are told, and relating that to Plato's allegory of the cave being a shadow, right? So then we have to ask ourselves, to what degree is this shadow true, factual, and consistent, and in alignment with what nature expects of me? So I ask myself, what does nature expect of me? I think that the first step we can do is to first understand what the facts are. What can we confirm to be true by virtue of our sight, our hearing? You know, we may be at fault. Maybe our sight, as Plato describes, could be an illusion. But if we can also accompany that sight with, you know, a degree of open-mindedness and critical thought.
I think it can be both. It's just a perceiver, so it can be the perception of illusion, or it could be the perception of truth.
So I suppose, like, for example, physical matter, which we can... The difference between the shadow in Plato's Allegory of the Cave, is it physical matter? No. So, like, the idea then, what is physical that we can actually define as true? I like to find out what is physically real, and then deduce what the metaphysical components of that are. And that can relate to a series of things, right? So, for example, as
I guess you're talking about matter. Matter would be physical.
Yeah.
And I guess metaphysics is, by definition, matter is beyond, so beyond physical. So I think, same way we have a body. Some people believe we have a soul within that body. So one is the perception of physical reality. The other would be the perception of kind of, beyond that.
But in order to be able to understand what the metaphysical might well be, or in order to be able to even postulate such an idea or claim, you would at least have to have it in alignment logically with what the physical matter suggests, right, or infers. The degree of possibility in nature calls for variation. There are logical consistencies that occur, and there are patterns that you can conceive. If something deviates from that pattern, it does not mean that that necessarily is wrong, nor does it mean that that is the path of the many. This is an interesting idea.
I don't think there's like one way. I feel like, because the human beings are incredibly, like, you know what I mean, complicated beings.
And
I feel like,
very.
Like you mentioned, free will, we have all different paths, but I feel like all of those different paths could still fall within the oneness. Like the spirit could formulate itself, you know, to formulate society. Someone could be a teacher, someone could be doesn't mean humans all have to be teachers or all have to be architects. And you mentioned perception of reality, or physical reality, almost. My argument to that would be our senses are limited. Okay, so sight, for example, we can see between infrared light and ultraviolet light. With our hearing, we can hear a certain decibel range.
That's
we can't hear
true,
a dog whistle, for example. There's limitations of feeling, there's limitations of taste. Some people lose their senses over time. So there's other animals where, like I mentioned, the dog can hear at a different frequency than we can. Some animals can see different lights that we can't see. So we have like a limited perception of what we can see as reality. So it doesn't mean other things aren't there. That's where the metaphysical comes in. Metaphysical would come from what is beyond physical reality, or our perception of what physical reality is.
I like what you said there about you know, what's beyond our physical virtues, sight, hearing, whatever, is not an accurate reflection of what might be there, right? But the way I like to think about that question is, what exists independently of us is true. Now that opens, you know, a wide spectrum of things, but I think that what exists independently of us and is not of our creation and is not needed for us to be present is true. You know, when I die, it will still be there, unless everyone is having an illusion, right? Because if I die, then you'll be able to confirm that reality exists after I die, unless we are all in this consistent illusion. So what is it that exists independently of us? Well, a lot of things, right? A lot of nature. We may not be able to understand because we are not it, right? Or we are it, but we are an expression of it. We are connected by our relationship to nature, but we are separated by this fucking ego, or this
It's the ego,
this consciousness, right? That we don't know.
Personification of ourself, our pride, our personality. And I'm going to pose a philosophical question here to the audience. It's probably the original philosophical question is, who are you? Okay, if you want to go beyond the ego, if you want to exit the allegory of the cave, you have to consider that question: who are you? I mean, that's beyond your name. That's beyond your personality. That's beyond the music that you like. It's, who is the very essence of you? Because if tomorrow, for example, you fell into amnesia, or woke up from a coma and you don't remember anything about your past life, you would still be who you are. But what would be absent for you is this whole story of who your family were, or your religion, your political party, your none of these things. If it can be removed from you, none of that is truly who you are. Those are, to an extent, the shadows on the wall, which we have been conditioned into believing from our birth. See where I'm going with this? From our birth,
I think scientists
we were given a
agree with
religion,
you.
we were given a political party, to an extent, we were given all these things. We formulated all these things into an ego, and that created a separation between us and other people.
Okay, let me just stop. Yeah, let me just butt in there, because
Yeah, go for it.
you know what? I think we will be shocked as to how many scientists out there are predominantly physicalists, right? They don't believe in any other substance beyond physical matter. So, like you said, if someone developed amnesia or became sick and ill, and all their experiences of their family, their memories, and everything that exists on this mental level, right? These mental properties that somehow are an effect of physical properties. They derive from the brain. They're not independent from the brain, and they wouldn't exist if the brain wasn't there, right? So are they an illusion, or are they the brain just expressing itself? Scientists agree, for the most part, not all scientists, of course, that physical matter is that which is only true. So if we are to say, who are you? A scientist might say, well, you are, XY chromosome, and just reduce you to physical data, right?
Just the physical, yeah.
Because you can't put your finger on the metaphysical.
So you mentioned the scientist's perception of physical reality. Well, going back to what I said about our perception of reality, the limited faculty we have, our sight between infrared light, ultraviolet light, our hearing, decibel range. So all they are able to, experience is physical reality. That, as humans, that is all we are. All the faculty we're given to an extent. If you're not going into the mind and meditation, what you can access beyond that, I would say, and what I would paint between, say, Buddha or the philosopher and the scientist is, if you have a picture, say the picture is the universe, the scientist has a magnifying glass and they're zooming in very closely to the closer picture, if that makes sense. They're finding truths within the pictures. They're doing scientific studies within the physical reality to find truths within that. I would say the philosopher or Buddha is taking a step back and looking at the wider picture, finding truths of the whole. That's what I would contrast the two separating sides.
Massive, because and that perhaps goes beyond the physical, right? Because by virtue of looking at the big picture, you don't have all the physical data in front of you. So you're relying to a certain degree on intuition and logic. I think that logic and intuition was the recipe of a lot of Socrates and Plato's ideas, right? They were, by definition, intuitive thinkers. They were able to take an abstract idea and make sense of it through logic and reason. That's why they were able to touch the hearts of many different people from all over the world. They spoke truths that we could not necessarily identify by eye unless we had experienced it ourselves. And even then, if we experienced it ourselves and it was beyond our physical sight, then it's down to our interpretation and our critical thinking skills as to whether or not we've been able to observe it and understand it as an experience and learn from it. So
absolutely.
So yeah.
I'm going to add to that. So going back to the allegory of the cave and what the truth is beyond it. If I'm going to put into words what I believe that truth is, I would say it is the contrast of this idea of separation, this idea of the ego, this idea of all the things that keep us kind of separate and outside of the light of our consciousness. And I'm going to read another quote.
Go on, please. Enlighten
This one is from a This one's from a documentary actually called Three Magic Words, which explores that question of who are you. It's a quote by Neil Donald Walsh. Okay, so I want to hear your response to this. So the single thing that I would say to people if they asked me, what can I do to change? I would say change the way you're looking at things. Bring an end to separation theology, to separation cosmology, to separation sociology. You see, separation theology uses theology that says I'm over here and God is over there. I'm separate from God and God is separate from me. That separation theology has created a separation cosmology. That is a way of looking at things cosmologically which suggests that everything is separate from everything else. That separation cosmology has produced a separation sociology. That is a way of socializing with each other that says I am me and you are you. That separation sociology has produced a separation pathology. That is pathological behaviors of self-destruction. All of this disappears in the moment that we abandon the idea of separation.
Wow. So, what we have compartmentalized in our understandings of reality to a certain degree may have separated us. That's maybe what,
Yeah.
what I was
Because
thinking about.
if you're looking at the cosmological side, like looking at the Earth as something that's separate from us, something that we're not, you know what I mean? We're in exchange with air with the Earth, for example. Exchange of water. Water purifies our water. Trees purify our water and we drink it. Trees purify our air. We're in exchange with the universe constantly. Even our defecation, our animals' defecation, is used to produce food. That's given to the Earth. It's like we're in an alchemical exchange with the Earth constantly. And when you take yourself out of that and see yourself as separate from everything else, that's when you litter. That's when you don't give a shit about destroying the earth, have factories literally constantly polluting the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat. I think you can only do that as a pathological behavior of self-destruction if you see yourself as separate from it.
Yeah, but I mean, because I was thinking there, where you could see yourself as separate from society, but then society is still a separated construct from nature. So like there are separations within separations to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, there are. It's like
so like
yeah,
so maybe what you might think is a bad separation may not be as bad as something else that's existing. The idea of living well, the Greeks had the phenomena of eudaimonia, the art of living well and living in accordance with reason and nature. I think that this is what human beings should aspire to. Now, I think we're getting on a bit.
I'll add one last point because we spoke about the purpose of human beings. Like I said, bees' purpose is to pollinate nature and to create honey. If you're going to look at what the human purpose is, I think we can both say a piece of what we believe that is. Because like I said, the shadows on the wall, or the media, society, we've been conditioned since birth to lose our touch with our nature, I believe. If you're going to look at what that nature is, what our purpose is on this planet, I would argue that we are the guardians and custodians of this planet. Clearly, if you compare us with any other thing in the animal kingdom, you can see that, from what we've created in this world, we are, I think, the leaders of the planet. I don't know if you would agree, but
we can exist within. Just to quote the Lord himself, he allowed us to rule over the land, the seas, and the animals and whatnot. But
so I would say we have a responsibility to the planet. We are guardians to the planet, and we are one with the planet and with nature. So therefore, we need to respect nature. We need to continue on this path and growing and evolving technologically, however we want. But I do believe we are guardians of the planet. And we've lost touch with that. I feel like we don't respect the world and each other to the extent we do. And I believe it's because of separation. I think because we see ourselves as separate from nature, we pollute. We see each other as separate from each other, so we hurt each other. We see ourselves as separate from everything. And I believe that's why we've lost touch. Yeah. I think those are the shadows that have been casted before us, which is separated from the oneness of the universe, the one song, the one dance. The one verse, universe.
No, I like your thinking. I just, it's bringing up another rabbit hole, which is the idea of,
Don't go down it. Just say
no. I'm not. I'm just
purpose.
Gonna. Well, I don't know. Well, what I believe is the human purpose. I don't.
Yeah.
A collective human purpose. the collective human purpose is to spread your seed, I think. And if we're looking at it, what does the human being do, or what can the human being do that is not a personal thing? I think, maybe not all of us should have children, but I think that perhaps we should reproduce as a function. We should eat. I used to think we should evolve, but I think that the fact that we age and then we soon die off, that evolution stagnates at some point, right? And then we decline. So I think that our purpose is whatever nature gives us. That's what I think.
I like that. You mentioned procreation. If you look at that word, creation, that's one of the, most amazing things humans do is create life. And if you look at the universe, or what some people call God, it is all about creation. It's about that Fibonacci sequence within nature. Everything's always growing, creating. So if you're
looking at the human condition, and what it's
you will contribute to that creation, and children is one way of doing that. So
that's what I think is like. You look at the facts and you see that a human being can reproduce, and then you logically make the argument, well, this might be in the best intentions of nature to do this. Now, that's not to disregard personal circumstance and all these different things. I'm talking about independent of that. If your circumstances didn't exist, this is perhaps what might be the path outlined by nature. That's what I'm saying. Irrespective of personal circumstance,
Okay.
If you're homeless, you can't, what are you going to do?
All right. But I think we'll cap it there, because otherwise we're going to just open rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
I agree.
I hope our ramblings kind of made sense there. We broke down our understanding anyway of the Allegory of the Cave. I'd invite you to look into the theory, see what it brings up for you. Again, we are a new channel. This is our first episode, so I'd really appreciate if people would like, subscribe, share your videos with your friends and family. If our channel grows, then obviously we'll be able to produce more content and have more conversations like this. So thank you deeply from my heart. Thank you for listening. I do appreciate any listeners out there. And welcome to the Sageverse again.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
Peace. Welcome to the Sageverse. Please just observe the birth of this creative surge for the purpose to leave hatred purged and replaced with words that will make you learn to take your place on earth. And once you've taken your place and found your greatest of traits, cultivated the day, this will be making you say, this is the sage's way.